So, you know what's so funny? I think the first time I heard that song, I thought about, what if it were sung by an alien? I mean, think about it. I don't know much about your world. I don't know much about anything. Doesn't it sound like an alien maybe was singing that? Okay, maybe that's just me. Doug, would you hand me my water right there? Thank you. So, thanks, Doug. Okay. So what do you say to taking chances? What do you say to jumping off the ledge, never knowing if there's solid ground below or hand to hold or hell to pay? What do you say? So let's just start with the idea of taking chances. For the last few weeks, we've been talking about some things. Love only, forgive everything, and remember who you are. That does not translate into be a doormat, just letting you know. Someone asked me about that, and I had to correct that. Love everything, love only, forgive everything, and remember who you are. I think that's taking a real chance, don't you? I think that's jumping off a ledge, don't you? If you're really doing it. How many people are trying this? I am. Sometimes, Marcy and Al, you aren't trying this? Al said, forgive everything. What are you, crazy? You're doing it, right? Yeah. So, I got to tell you, sometimes it does feel like jumping off a ledge. To know in the face of something that you really don't want to forgive. Or someone that you really don't want to forgive. Does anybody else have those moments? Those people in their lives? Those situations? That's jumping off of the edge, to me. That's taking a chance. Right now in CPR, we're just about to conclude CPR number 6. And this has been a very intense one, a very deep one for me. And I imagine they'll just keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper. But one of the things we're talking about right now is who am I? Who am I? Someone mentioned to me that they thought it was a very dangerous prospect to walk around saying, I am God. Can you see that? Yeah. I can see that. Who said no? Okay. I can see that it could be a dangerous thing for people to walk around saying, I am God, when they don't really know what that means. Or that suddenly entitles them to behave any way they want. And it's okay. After all, I'm God. Too bad. Obviously, that's not what I mean. I am God is merely an understanding of who the truth is of your beingness. And if you know you're God, then I also know Andrew and Christelle are God. I also know that Joe Jordan is God. I know that every single other person is God. So, yes, I can understand that it's dangerous. And someone said, it could cause lots of damage in the world if everybody thought they were God. And you know what? Here's the thing about that. You can take any spiritual truth and contort it into something that's destructive. Have you noticed that? In our world, you can take any religious pursuit and turn it around and use it in a destructive manner. You can even take the I am God concept and turn it around. So it's very important for us to really get the understanding of what this means. And just because it can be turned around, don't run away from it. Do as the song says. Take the chance to actually stand for something that you actually believe in, even if other people may have a little bit of a challenge with it, a little bit of a difference with how maybe you're saying it. Because let me ask you this. If you are not God, what is the alternative? Who are you? This is a big question that we're asking ourselves in CPR. Who am I? So if I am not God, if I am not the presence of the divine, if I am not divine intelligence, walking and talking and breathing and making decisions, if I'm not God, even when I'm making mistakes, the very few that I make, and I've made a few this week, believe it or not. Rita will tell you, I've made a lot this week. Kevin will really tell you. But when I make mistakes, does that mean I'm not God? No. God's making a mistake right now. And I know God can never make a mistake. Well, did I do that with a little disdain? God can never make... Well, I don't mean that God can never make a mistake. What I mean is life is always unfolding perfectly. But I can choose things that when I look back on them, I think, I wish I hadn't done that. Anybody else? Yeah. So, Ernest Holmes wrote this. Ernest Holmes wrote this. Man is a center of God consciousness. Man is a center of God consciousness. Man, woman, all of us, mankind. You are a center of God consciousness. Not the center of God consciousness, but you are a center of God consciousness. Everything about you is God consciousness expressing. He says, I love this, man is a center of God consciousness. At first, he is ignorant of this and misuses this power, consequently bringing on himself misfortune and negation. The consequences of not knowing who I am brings on misfortune and negation. Has anyone here had any misfortune in their life? Has anyone here had anything that they were kind of negating the good in their life, withholding the good in their life? So here's the deal. Why is that? Ernest Holmes is saying to us, the reason for this is because you don't know who you are. That's it. There's no other reason. There's no other reason. You can't point it any other place. You point it in one place only. I must not know who I am here. And here's the thing. Even when things are going on, the negation and the situations that you don't want, even in those moments, you can actually know who you are, experience what you're experiencing, and watch yourself transcend it so much faster. What Sharon just said was brilliant. In the midst of the most horrific conditions someone may have been having, the sheer momentary focus, move to truth, to God, to love, just relaxes all of this. Now, as she said, it doesn't get rid of it, perhaps. Maybe it's all still there. But the mind now that turns and looks at it is a very powerful mind. It's a much different mind than the mind who's stuck in it, yes? And that's what we're here to teach. That's what we're here to know. And it really does boil down to, who are you? So, I have this great little story. I was talking to Dr. Maureen Hoyt this week, and we were talking about who are you and being God. And we're talking about the challenges of saying, I am God. And I'm perhaps, and this is not an egotistical thing as in edging God out. It's the entertaining God only part of me. I'm probably one of the only ministers who stands on stage and says, I am God. And means it. Oh, well, thank you. So I'm happy about that. But I can tell you it's been a challenging journey from the day we opened these doors to we're in our 10th year now. From saying I am the individualization of God to no, I am God. This individualization stuff still keeps me separate at times. I am God. It's been a long journey. And Maureen and I were talking about this. And she was telling me this story about an actor. She said, I have a great story for you. So she said, I know this actor who has been really challenged for the last 10 or 15 years as an actor, and he hasn't gotten a lot of work, and he has a family, and they've really been struggling financially. They've really, really, really been struggling. And she said, and all of a sudden, he just went over to SAG to ask a question about something, and they said, tell me your name again. They said, could you wait here a minute? And they went back, and they said, could you come with us? Could you only imagine? It's like, oh, my God, they're taking my SAG card away. What have I done? So I haven't worked enough. So they bring him back, and they say, we have been looking for you. We don't have your correct address. And he looked at it, and he goes, oh, my God, that's an address from like 15 years ago. He says, well, that's the only address we have for you. You've never given us your correct address. We have checks for you. Now, this actor was someone who did a lot of movies back in the 70s and 80s. And the checks added up to somewhere, I think Maureen said, somewhere around $75,000. So I'm telling Bob Morrissey this story at the gym. I couldn't wait to get to the gym and tell him. I'm telling him this story, and Bob's like, I'm going to SAG today. So, except everybody knows where Bob Morrissey lives, so that's not going to problem. I'm telling him this story, and I went, oh, my God. I have to tell this on Sunday. Here's my talk on Sunday. And Bob's like, happy to help you. So, but think about this story. You didn't give us your address. We don't know where you live. We don't know who you are because you haven't told us. You haven't accepted it. All of your good is waiting. We are just waiting to give you what is yours. But you keep moving to addresses unknown. The title of my talk. To addresses unknown. And you keep forgetting who you are. You keep changing your name. You keep changing your thoughts. You keep changing your beliefs. You keep changing the atmosphere of your consciousness. The money was always there. The universe just didn't know where to send it. So it's a metaphor, isn't it? The address. He didn't give his address. They didn't know where to find him. The atmosphere of the mind. So my question to you this morning is, where do you live? Where do you live? What's the address of your mind? What's in your consciousness? What atmosphere do you live in? We talk about this in CPR. The atmosphere of your mind. Are you in the atmosphere of lack? Are you in the atmosphere of this is challenging, this thing called life? Are you in the atmosphere of regret? Someone spoke to me this week and said, with all of my talent, I should have been somewhere else. That's not true, is it? Because basically you're saying where you live isn't where you should live. And the shoulds kill us, don't they? We just should all over ourselves. And it just kills us, doesn't it? The should. So do you live at Regretville? Do you live in the land of regret? Do you live in the land of disappointment? Disappointed with whatever in your life? Where do you live? And now here's the next question. Are you conscious of where you live? Are you conscious of where you live? I believe it's very important for us to not just say, I am God, but to have a conscious identity. Not a subconscious one. I think many of us, even in this center, I think many of us are closet gods. Think about it. I just never knew I'd had another closet to come out of. But frankly, we all do. We are closet gods. We're okay when we're in the God bar. And everybody's having a good old time. But then we have to leave the God bar. This is the God bar, by the way. We have to leave the God bar and go back out into the world. It's like, whoa, I'm not God. I'm just a person. I'm just a man. I'm not arrogant. I don't want you to think that I'm something more than you are. I mean, I think that's what's going on. And because of that, we're really not living in our identity. We don't have what I am now going to call conscious identity. Consciously aware of who I am at all times. Something goes on in my life. My son and I had a little riff last night. And I have to tell you, the only way I got through that little riff, I get it. That little riff. The only way I got through that little rift, I fixed it. That little rift was because I remembered who I was the whole time. How can I not, when I'm in the middle of this CPR, how can I not say, okay, this is really uncomfortable. This is really, really making me sad. This is really uncomfortable. But it's God that's sad. It's God that's uncomfortable. Because the minute I divorce myself from God in this situation, I am literally up a creek without a paddle. Who's going to handle this? Who's going to know the truth about this? How am I going to really figure this out? Because I don't want to figure it out based on everything I'm experiencing. Do I now? No, even though that's what we'll be told. I want to figure it out because I know who I am even when that happens. So, are you conscious of your identity? Conscious identity. And you stay in it at all times, no matter what. I know who I am, and I know where I live. Say that for me. I know who I am, and I know where I live. And now say this, send the check. Right? Because that's what it is. Send the check. Yes. And it doesn't have to be about money. It can be about love. It can be about creativity. It can be about anything. But send the darn check. I know where I am. I know who I am. I know where I live. And now the universe knows it too, which is really more important. That when I stand in my conscious identity, everyone knows it. Everyone knows it. And the law knows it too. Except when I forget. And then I move to 444 Regret Drive. Anyone ever live there? Or, how about this one? 777 Disappointment Lane. That was a good address. I had that one for a while. Or 429 Uncertainty Road. How many of you have some uncertainty going on in your life? I remember every time I'd go into Dr. Walker's office, after a while, because he was my personal practitioner, after a while I would walk in, and before I could even sit down, he goes, I know you want a treatment for uncertainty. Very rude of him, I might say, but he was right. I would go, yeah, really, I just need, he goes, oh my God, Just get clear, will you? He was so much like Bob Newhart. Just stop it. Just stop it, for God's sake. You're clear, you're certain. Get out of my office. And I am certain now. I am certain that Dr. Walker was a great teacher. Absolutely. I live at 429 Uncertainty Road. How about, now it took me a while to think this address up, so I expect applause. No, I'm kidding. How about, unless you feel compelled to, how about I live at 111 Oneness Circle? Thank you, Bob. Isn't that good? 111 Oneness Circle. That place, thank you, Barbara Niles, that place where all there is certainty, and there's no beginning or ending to it. I'm just one with everything, and I know who I am, and I am the one who can handle and know and do everything. That works for me. So much it works for me. So the question is, how hard do you make it for your good to be delivered? Think about it. How hard do you make it for your good to make it to your address? Every time you complain about something, you've just moved with an unknown forwarding address. Every time you find yourself focused on the conditions of your life, you have just literally told the universe you don't know where you live. Because you don't know the truth of who you are. You don't have conscious identity in that moment. So how hard do you make it for your good to come to you? I mean, let me ask this. How many people, if every single one of you absolutely believed that somewhere right now in this city within a mile radius there was a check for you for $75,000, how many of you would leave me standing, and you had to get it in the next 5 minutes, how many of you would just leave me standing on this stage? You two, thank you. Thank you. They're staying. Okay, good, because there's more to know. Ah, you're smart. So, no. Oh, okay, I was kidding. Lacey, I was kidding. Would you open that door and leave it open? Thank you. So here's the deal. So there is $75,000 at least waiting for you somewhere. Some equal to that. In some way. And that's nothing. That is so little. Why did I say 75,000? Well, because that's what he had waiting for him. We could have 75 million, billion, gazillion. Because that's who we are. We are that infinite. Oh, my goodness. So, you live, as Ernest Holmes wrote, within the consciousness of God. That's where you live. That's your address. Where do I live? I live within the consciousness of God. Right where I am is the consciousness of God, which means there's the possibility of everything. Everything is possible, and everything is deliverable. As opposed to any of you that seem to think you live on some really weird street, really far away that no one can ever find. And I think we do that sometimes. So I have a question for you. What can you do today? What one thing could you do today to let the universe know that you live in the right zip code? You know how we talk about zip code out here? Remember that TV series 90210? That was like that was the zip code you were supposed to have. It still is. It's still on? Wow. I thought it was a revival of it. Yeah. So, hallelujah. So, what one thing can you do today? And I really want you to ask that. I want you to think about this. What one thing can you do today that would really inform the universe that not only do you know who you are, but you know where you live, and your address is so clear that your good has to start being delivered to you? What one thing could you do today? Well, if you haven't come up with one, I'll give you one, which is that you could stop basing where you live on your conditions. You can stop creating the atmosphere of your life based on the conditions of your life as they are right now. This CPR, I've been so clear, so amazingly clear, that conditions are not who I am. I am not my conditions. I'm certainly the person who attracted those conditions. I'm the person who perhaps created those conditions, but I am not my conditions. That is one thing you could start getting so clear on in your life. That is one absolute simple thing you could do. You could stop really relating to and identifying with and becoming one with your conditions. And yet, sometimes I find myself taking up residence right in the middle of a condition. Like last night when I had such a challenging evening, I was taking residence in that condition And then in an instant, I went, wait a minute, who's here? Who are you? Who are you? Are you this? Are you this condition? No, you're not. That kind of answer, just like what Sharon did with her friend. You pull the focus away from the condition to the truth of who you are, everything changes, and I can make absolute logic out of that. Well, I'm here, what's because going on, and this is how I feel, this is the reality of my situation, and logically speaking, I totally get why I am where I am. And I can be told logically, from the logic of the world, why this all makes sense, and it will still do nothing for me. Because guess what? I am so much more interested in spiritual logic than in regular logic. And spiritual logic would say to me, I am a conscious identity. I know who I am. And I also know where I live. I live in the place where there is only God. There's only good. There's only success. There's only prosperity. There's only love. That's where I live. And I'm clear. And I'm willing to live there. So, it's interesting. We do a lot at the gym, Bob and I. We work out. But we work out our minds and we talk a lot while we're working out. We're not those people that go to the gym and talk. We actually do work out. But Bob at one point said to me, he said, that's pure science of mind. Something I said, probably one of the many things I said. And he said, that's pure science of mind. And I said, no, that's not pure science of mind. I said, that's pure science of logic. And I was so emphatic. And anybody on my Facebook page know what I wrote here. I said, it's the science of logic. I'm done with the science of mind. It's got to be the science of logic, or I'm not going to be able to buy it. I want it to make logical sense, because guess what? This whole thing of, no, I'm going to believe it even though it doesn't make sense. You know what? I don't know how many people can really do that. And frankly, here's the problem with that. We should be able to make logical sense out of things that in the past we said were miracles. They're not miracles. They're not something that only the few can do. That was not the few. That wasn't even the few. What the few can do. We should be able to make spiritual logical sense out of everything. Yes? Yes. Okay, so then I'm not willing to just make logical sense out of anything anymore. It has to make spiritual logical sense. So I said to Bob, no, that is the science of logic. And then I realized what I really meant, because I wrote, no. I said, no, the science of unlimited logic, the soul. S-O-U-L. Science of unlimited logic. That's good, isn't it? So that is what we are here doing today. You have in your mind the ability to make spiritual logic out of everything, yes? Yes. You are learning a science of unlimited logic, meaning that nothing should come into your purview that you say, oh my God, how did that happen? You know the answer. You know the answer. Something in your mind attracted whatever it is in, and you have the power to take that very something that you attracted in and say bye-bye. That's what we teach. You know, here's what's interesting to me. One of the first things you teach a child when they're little, 3 or 4, what the first things you teach them, just in case they get lost, is to memorize their address. Right? You teach your child to memorize their address. So if they get lost, they can say, I live at 111, thank you, 111 Oneness Lane. So, circle. Oh, thank you. Okay, so, you are really paying attention. That's great. I remember when we lost Will at Disneyland, a brief second, before you think we are these horrible parents.
20 minutes of hell.
It wasn't 20 minutes, it was like 5 minutes. It felt like 5 hours. But we were standing at the Pirates of the Caribbean, and I had Nora in my arms, and I thought that I thought that Kevin had Will, or that Will had Kevin. I thought that Kevin had Will, and we were standing there, and I could see the stroller, the double stroller, and all of a sudden and Will was standing right there with him, looking at something, and then all of a sudden the Pirates of the Caribbean let out. And you know when they let out, there's like 200 people that just come storming out? I'm like, oh, wow. And I turn, and there's Kevin, and no Will. And Will just got swept away with the crowd. And I turned to Kevin, I was like, where's Will? He goes, he's with you. I was like, he's not with me. He's with you. And Nora's there, and I'm trying. So I throw Nora to Kevin, and I go looking. Oh, there's Nora. And I go looking for Will, and he's just, no, here's the deal. He knows his address. Not that they were going to drive him all the way from Disneyland back to Bluebell. But he knew to tell them right where he was. He knew to tell him where we last were. And they were there within minutes. But you know what that moment is when you're standing? I don't know how many parents are here, but you know that moment when you're standing and all of a sudden there's your child, and you're like, and you go running, and all of a sudden, well, I think it's time for us to have that little moment with ourselves. Because I think there's the part of us that we've forgotten. And I think somehow we've forgotten our address. We actually think we live in the houses we live in. We actually think we live in the lives we live in. We actually think that we live the life that our conditions are telling us we live. And yet when we were born, we were imprinted upon with this truth. You are me, I am you. I am that which thou art. And this is your address. It's called heaven. And no matter where you go, no matter what you do, you will always be there. So no matter what's happening to you in your life, you will always be at home. You will always be at the perfect address. And you will always know who you are. So, if your life isn't what you want it to be right now, if you're experiencing anything in your life, lack, limitation, disease, if you're experiencing anything that doesn't feel like heaven to you, perhaps all it's going to take is for you to remember and to be conscious about who you are. And then right where you are, to remind yourself, wait, this is where I live. Like Sharon did. This is where I live. I live in this consciousness called God. I live from this consciousness called God. And then I defy you to stand in that with certainty. I defy you to not watch everything just fall away. And all that's left is this brilliant light of truth. What do you say to taking chances? What do you say to jumping off this ledge? Never knowing if there's solid ground below or hand to hold or hell to pay, but we do know. That's the difference here. So what do you say? I heard someone say this week, just close your eyes and jump. That's faith. Just close your eyes and jump. That's faith. For me, I'd like to tell you, keep your eyes open and jump. Don't be afraid of whatever's going on in your life. You don't have to close your eyes and jump to have faith. You can keep your eyes wide open and look at your world exactly the way it is and still have absolute faith and still jump. Repeat after me, I know who I am. And I know where I live. So what I'd like to say in closing to you today is to dare to know who you are. Dare to be who you are. Dare to live who you are. And dare to let everyone know where you live. I live in the center of God consciousness at all times. And as such, my good is deliverable. And it's deliverable now. Namaste. Thank you. Thank you.